Hi guys, welcome back from the break. In the second half of the class, we're going to talk about actual results of the elections in Spain, and we're going to try to understand voters in Spain and who votes for whom. So first thing we're going to talk about is the electoral history of Spain. As you know, the first elections that were pseudo-democratic were in 1977. Those were the elections to choose the parties that were going to draft the constitution, and after that we voted again in 1979. These two governments were part of UCD. It was a center party that disappeared after 1982 elections. And from then, actually, you can see how PSOE, the center-left party, we mentioned it in class, we talked about them, we talked about this history, we talked about the importance. And Spain won election after election, winning 84% of the vote. Actually, in Spain, that means absolute majority in parliament, for sure. They were in power from 1982 up until 1996. In 1996 is the first time that the right wing wins in Spain. Well, I mean, obviously with UCD it was a center-right party, but it was the first time that Partido Popular wins elections in Spain. They won the elections in 1996, and they won with an absolute majority, as you can see here, in 2000. After 2004, because, there are many reasons, but also affected by the terrorist attack in Madrid 3 days before the elections, the socialists won again. They won 2 terms in a row, but actually at this time the socialists were in government when the economic crisis hit Spain, and you can imagine what that meant. Actually, the country was brought to its foundations. So they lost the elections in 2011. They called snap elections after 3 years, and they lost those elections, and the Partido Popular won with a clear majority. Those were the last elections in the two-party system in Spain. We know about this. I actually asked you in the midterm exam about the two-party system in Spain, and how from 2011 we have quite a few other parties entering the system. The first two, as we saw in this class, were Podemos and Ciudadanos. And we see how in 2015 Podemos and Ciudadanos make it to the picture, and you can see how PP and PSOE already drop the percentage of vote they get. I mean, we were talking around here at this time, for example, at this time, we're talking about 75% vote, and that was consistent. 75% of the vote is in a massive share of vote if you think that we also have regional parties in this country. And at this time, they are not even making 50% anymore. And all that vote is going to Podemos Ciudadanos, and in the last elections, as we're going to see, also to the right-wing party, Vox. So we see how the system completely changed, and the electoral history shows that kind of change in dynamic and kind of change in the political culture. I mean, last week we were talking about political discontent that actually allowed other parties to appear, also disaffection, and how people were not engaged in politics as much and actually did not believe in the system. I mean, obviously we can interpret that data. I mean, we can interpret these data based on the terms we actually used last week in class. So if we continue with the electoral history, it's actually quite interesting, the span of time between 2011 and nowadays. At that time, actually, these are opinion polls, and we see how at a time, actually, Podemos, Podemos left-wing, I mentioned in class that Podemos actually more to the left than Bernie Sanders, in a sense, and we see how Podemos at some point actually was first in the polls. And then that was quite interesting. Then actually the electoral results were not as solid as the polls showed at that time. But Podemos was actually there and actually contending head-to-head. It was the elections in 2015 that actually changed the dynamic, and we are kind of going back to a two-party system. It's not a two-party system. We have 2 very strong parties and others that they are supporting them. So if we talk about the voters' profile, we can obviously use different cleavages. We can understand it through different dimensions. If we talk about age, older voters will traditionally vote for traditional parties. If we see actually how people that are over the age of 65 will vote for PSOE and PP in their majority. Very few of them will vote for Podemos. Actually, younger people will vote for newer parties. Actually, that's where PSOE and PP, who are the largest parties, scores wars. If we talked about middle-aged people, people in their 30s, in their 40s, we see that there's a variety right there. So actually, that's quite an interesting cleavage, and actually that might talk about the dynamics to come in the Spanish system, how it might change over time, and how Podemos or Ciudadanos, well, Ciudadanos you will see after the last results, probably not, but Podemos or Vox or other parties, these newer parties, might actually even do better over time. If we talk about income, this is family income. You see, which is not, that is not surprising that most people with the highest rent will vote for Vox, that's the far right-wing party. They will also vote for Ciudadanos, that is a center conservative, center liberal, we mentioned it in class, party. And what is the most interesting part is that actually those who have an income under 900 euros a month, they will likely vote for PP, for the conservatives. And this is the ironic part of it. I mean, this can be interpreted in many ways, but what is interesting is that, yeah, people with less income will likely vote for traditional parties as well. And you will see that this is something that reproduces also with education. People less educated are more likely to vote for traditional parties. We're talking PSOE and PP. We are talking about parties with more history. I'm not saying that they're traditional ideology. I'm talking about older parties, so to say, that have been longer in the system. Well, people, and this is amazing, people with higher education, with university education, they're most likely to vote for Podemos, to this left-wing extreme party, or for Ciudadanos, this center party. I mean, actually, Ciudadanos, not quite likely nowadays, as you're going to see in the results of the November elections. Last but not least, if you are, depending on how you ideologically position yourself, obviously, the more to the left you position, the more likely you're to vote for Podemos, the more to the right for Vox. I mean, this is obviously, there's a perfect correlation between the party ideology and the self-identified ideology of the voters. If we continue to the November elections, you can talk about different parties that were running. Yeah, actually the theme of the elections, bear in mind that these were the second elections in the same year. This is the first time in history that we vote twice in one year. In April, there were other elections. However, the majority resulting from that parliament was unable to form a government. That's why we had to call snap elections. And you can imagine that this highly determined how parties campaigned. For example, PSOE was saying, ahora sí, now yes. Why? Because they were actually trying to transmit that idea that now they were going to be able to form a government. You can see it underneath there, ahora gobierno, ahora España. Now government, now Spain. If we talk about PP, they use the slogan of por todo lo que nos une, for everything that brings us together. Same candidate, actually new image. Actually, this is quite interesting to analyze how Pablo Casado let his beard grow between both elections to give kind of a more non-conventional approach, so to say. Less conventional politician approach. In por todo lo que nos une, for everything that brings us together, trying to bring all the vote from the right wing to one single party. Because actually, this is the interesting part. Actually, in these elections, you can see the strategies for PSOE and PP was not competing with each other, even though they were the two main parties and the only two with clear possibility of winning the elections. They were actually competing against the parties in their cluster. PSOE was competing against Podemos, and PP was competing against Ciudadanos, and was competing against Vox. And that reflects perfectly well in the slogans they chose for the campaigns. If we talk about Ciudadanos, this was actually a campaign that actually failed. España en Marcha, it did not really work well. Actually, España en Marcha is Spain in motion, and they were trying to identify themselves with Macron in France, because actually Macron had just used this slogan in the elections he won against Marine Le Pen. And there you can see it, the correlation between both. And actually, these as you will see in the results, did not really work. They did not really target any specific voter. It was a message that was not really well targeted. It was not really focused. With Podemos is quite interesting, because the slogan they took in the campaign actually pretty well showed what they were hoping for. Because what it says is un gobierno contigo, a government with you. What they are asking for is for them to end the government. Actually, eventually, this is what happened. But what they're aspiring to, what they're aiming for, is to be the coalition partner in the government with PSOE. And last but not least, we have Vox, that actually their slogan was España siempre, always Spain. That worked perfectly well, targeted traditional voters that put Spain as the main priority. Spain as the concept of territorial integrity, and obviously the cleavage of Catalonia played a very big role in these elections, and clearly benefited Vox and their extreme position there. There was an electoral debate. I can tell you that debates have not always happened in Spain. We had electoral debates in 1993 if I'm correct. Yes, 99-3, that's absolutely correct. If I recall well, yeah, 99-3 González against Aznar. And then we didn't have debates anymore up until the last debate was 20, no, it was before Zapatero, so it was 2008. So 2008 was then when we took it back, and now every elections we've been having debates. But this was the first debate with more than 2 people taking part in the debate. Why? Because the results of the elections were so split. There was no such clear 2 dominant parties that we had 5 candidates in the debate. And you can see the profile of the candidate is very, it's very similar. They're all men in their 30s/40s. And there's very little variety in their profiles of the candidates. And that's quite interesting because, for example, now the Ciudadanos does have a woman as a leader, but the other parties, they remain the same. And they are not offering anything new in that sense. In the debate, actually, kind of predicted more or less what was about to happen with the elections. This is what people thought of who had won the debate, and most people thought it was Pedro Sánchez of PSOE, and as you can see the percentages there. What were the results of the elections? And then you can see the comparison between the elections in April and the elections in November. The results were almost pretty much the same. The majority gain was almost the same, but this time we were able to form a government between PSOE, as you can see it here, and Podemos, and the support of many nationalist parties. The main change of these elections is a small growth of Partido Popular, but then you can see how Ciudadanos almost disappears. This was a tragic result for Ciudadanos, really bad message in Spanish society and how polarized it is at the moment. And then on the other hand, you can see how Vox, this extreme right-wing party, this populist party, grew in the elections to a point that they are now the 3rd political party in the Spanish parliament, which is, in a sense, I have to say, worrying. So this was about it about elections in Spain. Sorry, obviously this is a very exciting topic. We could be talking about this for hours, but this is about it. I'll see you on Wednesday, and yeah, hope you for the best. If you have any question, just send me an email. Bye.